Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Paula McCain. I'm a recovery business advisor for the North Central Texas SBDC. Let me share my screen. The SBC is grant funded, and because of that, it allows us to offer services such as these webinars to you at no cost. We are the leading provider of assistance for small businesses. Today is Veterans Day. And the presentation today is Mission Success, Veterans Business Training, presented by Rebecca Schultz. Rebecca has been helping business owners to access money and financial education for over 25 years. She is the founder and executive loan consultant of Centerlock Funding. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you. And I love the pictures and I love the sentiment. I too am child of a veteran. I have a son that served, so I can certainly appreciate the young and the old mix in that presentation picture. All
Thank
right,
you.
so here we go. Let's go ahead and get to our presentation today. Give me one second. And there we go. So we are talking about mission success, right? We're talking about veteran-owned businesses. And in this conversation, I really wanted to bring information that was relevant, not only in the civilian business world, but kind of bridging the conversation from the military business world, right? So giving you a nice mix and hopefully giving you new perspective on how to frame the business conversation going forward. All right, I am Rebecca Schultz. I'm the founder and executive loan consultant for Centerlock. I love what I do. I get to have fun and interesting conversations all the time. I value that. I am not only a business owner, but I was a lender and I still lend for over 25 years. Right, so I am constantly talking about how to evolve businesses and get them the support that they need in order to grow. And so out of that kind of mission, um, you know, we're going to talk about how we bridge that with communication. So I love this proverb. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. Right? And so I'm going to think about this going together as us coming together and supporting each other. Right? That's a community, that's a family. And we're going to talk about going far, right? Because we can go far together. All right, so today's conversation is going to be divided up into 5 different sections. We're going to talk about leveling communication. We're going to talk about the business accountability partnerships. I know that's a little different, right? But I'm going to share some insight that I had when I was on a base not too long ago, and how that kind of mirrors in with the business world. Super happy to hear your feedback on that too. I'm always open to growth on that, but we'll have that conversation. And we'll talk about the importance of branding and culture. Right? Probably didn't think about walking into mission success, talking about branding and culture, but it's very real. And we have fantastic examples within the military, right? So we're going to be talking about how that plays into the importance of business success. And then we're going to connect all of this and all the knowledge that we're going to be kind of traveling through in our journey so we can have a really good understanding of all of this fits together, and that will come in a summary or a debrief. Okay? All right, so let's talk about leveling communication. Earlier, I was joking with Brett and the team that everything I talk about, even with numbers, it all comes back to one main concept, which is communication. And when we're talking about veteran communication, right, I like to say that the language is a little different. It's all the same, right? Business, um, strategy, leadership, it's very, very much a similar basis. But what we get to do is we get to talk about it under different terms. So let's bring that terms together and let's kind of drive a common knowledge. So business communication has different levels. I think we can all agree to that, right? We've got the upper level, middle level, and a lower level. So we're gonna call that the strategic level for the upper level. For the middle level, what we would call in the business world middle management, right? That's the operational. Right? And then we've got the tactical goals or tactical communication, and that's on the ground, right? That's what's happening in each of these interactions. Right, that's something hopefully you guys can relate to, right? Now, again, we're going to be trying to morph that into the civilian business world conversation and how this communication works together within your small business to support you. So we obviously need all of these communication levels, right? Strategic, like leadership, operational, management, tactical, hands on the ground, boots on the ground, getting things done. All of that comes together for a successful business. Now, we have to make sure that the messaging, the communication is purposeful, right? That it reaches the people that it needs to reach and it keeps the overall vision of that business moving forward. Now, this is the interesting part. As a business owner, your job is to communicate at all levels, but typically we want you to stay in more of that strategic communicator level. You as the leader, you know what the big picture needs to be to accomplish, and somebody's got to be pushing that big picture forward, right? Um, when you get to more of the operational or the tactical levels, those are typically levels, one, that you support, but two, there needs to be a focus or a manager or somebody specializing in that communication to move it forward, right? Okay, so let's divide that up. Let's talk about these three different levels. Let's start with the strategic communication. So that is the mission, right? That is what the business is trying to accomplish, what it's in business to do. This needs to be the overall leadership, right? And it's very much goal oriented, right? So what are you in business to do? What's your goal? What's the whole purpose? Right? And it drives the value of the business. You can't have a strong business and have wishy-washy strategic management, right? It's not going to last for very long. It needs to be strong leadership from the top. Now, the strategic communicator or leader is going to set both the short-term and the long-term goals for the mission, right? For the business. And it determines what success looks like. I'm going to just hang there for a moment because each one of our businesses, right, it's in our mind, it's in our heart, maybe it's actually already operating. But what success looks like is defined by the leadership. It's what they're driving to. And that would be your job as that strategic leader. All right, so leadership, one of the biggest and most impactful conversations we can have today, right? Strong leadership is going to be a game changer in any business. It has to be, right? Clear goals that has communication that drives efficiency, right? That separates good businesses from bad businesses. And you have to ask yourself, like, are you that leader for that business? Are you acting as the leader? Right? And if you're not the leader, then who is the leader in that business? Are your goals and your mission of your business clear, not only for yourself to see, but for those around you, right? So think about, how are you communicating? How are you leading those around you? Do they know what they're supposed to be doing? Do your employees, your customers, and your suppliers even know what to expect from working with you? Right? Communication from the top needs to be clear all the way down to the bottom. And then you need to know, how much time does your leadership team spend on improving communication, right? Making sure that the message is out there, that you're on track, that you need to get better on track, right? Are you communicating from that leadership standpoint? Really good conversation, right? Okay. Now, as we go through these, I really intended for you to go back in the handouts and try to answer the questions with the exclamation or the question marks, okay? So you'll kind of think through these conversations on your own after the presentation and make sure that you're setting yourself up for success here. All right, switching gears, right? We went from strategic, and let's talk about operational communication. Now, you guys understand this is more task-driven, right? leadership has set the goal. Now it's on to the operational to figure out how to manage it and actually make it happen. So they're going to clearly define what needs to be done, right? And then how to achieve those strategic goals. They're also going to help with documenting a process and procedures so that it's getting done in a manner that's intended, safe, secure, right? That it's actually accomplishing the goal. Now, oftentimes, operational communication is going to be measured in time as well as deliverable outputs, right? That's how they speak. That's how they make sure things are happening. That's how they report back to the strategic leadership that things are happening. And then resources and support are a big part of the conversation. They're trying to figure out how to get it done, what needs to happen, right? What resources or tools are needed in order for them to fully accomplish the goals that have been given to them. That is a large part of what they do, right? And so in the civilian world, we're going to consider them more of like the middle management or supervisors that are in place in order to make sure things are actually tracking. All right. So remember, as we're going through these different levels, we are making sure that we understand them and whatever our business vision is, and that we're able to identify the people, the positions that are going to be supporting us. Big part about operational communication, what separates strong businesses from weak businesses is going to be operations is always trying to improve, always trying to get more efficient, always reaching out and getting insight from those that are working on how they can improve the processes and procedures, right? Just remember, always improving. Now, operational leadership, right? All of it comes down to communication. They need strong communication. They need to know how to measure that essential component of the business, what they're trying to achieve. It takes different skill sets than the strategic leadership, right? Strategic leadership's more of the vision, the big picture, right? And then when it comes down to operational, they're more of getting in the details, making sure they're managing those details, think project management, all right? And then they have to be very, very thoroughly organized, as well as they're dealing with different personality types, right? And so that requires quite a bit more of the emotional intelligence as they're interacting and they're leading and they're trying to get things accomplished. So questions to ask yourself for this role is, do your employees know how to do their job, right? Process, procedure, what needs to be done, what time frame it needs to be done in, right? And has that work been tested, or is it improved, right? Is there a process been tested and improved? And have you dedicated communication channels to ensure the proper function? And when we talk about communication channels, all businesses, right, need to have communication between the different levels. But this is where businesses can start to determine how they communicate in these different levels and carry it from top down and from down to the top, right? From tactical all the way up to the strategic level. I have different businesses I work with that use different forms of communication. They'll have an intranet, for example, that communicates leadership goals and focus, and they might use another tool like Slack to go from operational leadership, like middle management, all the way down to the employees or the tactical. Right? So think through the communication channels, make sure that you're allowing for every person to be touched in a manner that supports their role. Right? And then how do those operational leaders communicate to the strategic leaders? Right? Is that a different form of communication? Is that separate meetings that needs to happen? Right? How does that look? What's that protocol? Okay. So again, all about communication, about understanding the roles. All right, so now we're going to switch on to the final step, which is going to be more of that tactical, right? That's that task driven, getting the work done. This is your boots on the ground, which is focused on logistics and accomplishments, right? And it breaks down what needs to happen, the success of the business, into time, right? Hours, days, weeks. You might set monetary goals, right? Sales goals on it. It really breaks down what needs to happen, what was set to happen from the strategic level, from operations level, into actually transacting the sales or the accomplishment, right? So people in the tactical communication world, they need to have strong interpersonal skills, right? They need to know how to get things done. And that means working with different personality types, different types of people, right? Different types of environments. And really, the best form of intelligence comes from the tactical leaders when they're down making things happen, right? That's so important for the business to be successful, that there needs to be a way to gain their insight, feedback, what they're seeing, and bring that back up to the strategic level so that it could possibly change or be more impactful, right? It's really important that communication happens through all levels. All right, so tactical leadership, right, boots on the ground tactical leadership takes strong communication and intelligence. That is essential. You cannot have strong tactical leadership if they don't have a really detailed eye on that communication and what needs to happen, the intelligence side of it. Tactical accomplishments are the heart of the business, all right, because they make things happen. And the face of the business comes from the tactical team. So think about that, right? You're running a business, it's a sales business. Your folks are going out there to close the sales, to be in front of the customer or the client. They're literally the face of the business. That's how important this leadership team is. And how do your customers experience the company? These are the questions I want you to ask. And how do your tactical team members treat each other? Right? So how do they interact amongst each other? Because how they interact, right? That environment, that world that they're living and breathing in comes across to the customers, right? And then do you have a process that listens to these team members and helps bring their ideas back up through the ranks, through the operation to the strategic? Cannot tell you enough how important that is, right, for the business to be well run, as well as to have the missions and visions accomplished. All right, so when we're talking about this types of communication, what I really want you guys to be thinking about, right, and it's important for all businesses, is the individual strengths and weaknesses. Now, when I say this, I know I probably get a little pushback, but all of us have strengths and weaknesses. That's just the fact, right? Can't say anybody I've ever met who is strong in everything. Like, it doesn't happen. So I need for individuals to really think through what leadership skills they currently have, right? And then what leadership skills that they need to borrow from. They either need to hire, right? Or they need to find key players to complement them, maybe partners, right? So it's skill set that they need to find. And so they need to think through each level of this communication to be able to understand how they're going to effectively operate and run their businesses. They just need to cover each level. So what message needs to be communicated? That comes from our strategic leaders. How do they communicate? So what tools and time frame is this communication going to happen in? Right? And then how am I doing with communication? You've got to create a feedback loop. You got to get feedback from all levels to see whether or not you're actually being impactful or something needs to change. All right, so take a deep breath. That was a lot, right, in a short amount of time. So I do want you to ask questions, insight. I'm definitely interested in your feedback. And so put that into the chat box. And so as we're going, right, we'll make sure that we're addressing those questions. All right, so next section is we're going to take that kind of intrinsic understanding and we're going to push it a little bit further. We're going to talk about business accountability partnerships. Now that is a big title, right? That's a big title, but I'm going to tell you the insight and where that came from. So my son was in the military, right? He has since now been honorably discharged. But in that conversation, I remember going to the base and seeing these partners, you know, 2 by 2, right? You never go anywhere alone. You always go together. And I remember being so struck by that and thinking to myself, here in business, right, it's pretty scary. In business, people start a business and oftentimes they're having to go at it alone. And from the military standpoint, you never go alone, right? And so I remember thinking, boy, wouldn't that transform the business culture, if we were able to create those type of partnerships, right, similar to the military, always having somebody to go with, right? And so that's that accountability partnership that I'm proposing to you today. All right, so you want to explore who you are as a leader, right? Which kind of communication style are you driven to? What kind of communication have you honed your skills in? Are you more of a strategic leader? Are you more of the operational side? Is that where you've been? Or are you more of the tactical side? Like, appreciate where your journey has brought you to this moment, right? None of that experience is not valid. All of it is valid. But then you need to understand how you're going to show up in that business, and how you show up is important. And then maybe there's other skill sets that you need to either hone in order to be the best you, right? Or complement. Find somebody to help you with it. Right? It's impossible for you to be everything to everyone, right? That's common knowledge. You can't do it all, right? Jack of all trades, master of none. It's forever been known to humanity. So identify that leadership strength and what skills that you need your team members to be to complement you, and answer the questions. How do you communicate? What is natural for you to communicate, right? How do you show up to others in these conversations? You are a leader. So how do you show up in that leadership? Right? Who do you enjoy working with? That's a good one. You want to challenge yourself? Go and take a piece of paper, right? Or a big notepad, and just ask yourself, like, who have you enjoyed working with over time? Who are those people? Right? What were their personality traits? What did they do? What made you a good partnership or team? Right? Maybe it was because they had different insights than you, right? And then you were able to cover one set of skill sets or insights, and theirs complemented yours. They saw things you didn't see. Whatever that situation was that was ideal to work with, I want you to think about it, because in a moment, we're going to talk about how you pick up on different types of communication and personality that help complete the business cycle, meaning that helps you be more well-rounded, diverse, and have a better understanding of what you're trying to accomplish. All right. And then essentially, what I'm going to propose to you is that you have all of these areas of leadership covered. You got me right, right? We got strategic, operational, tactical. You want to have all of those covered. You can't do them all yourself, right? So you're going to have to go and find the teams that will help you be able to cover that, and then identify how you're going to communicate through all levels of your business. All right. So in the business world, there are tons of different type of personality, I guess you would say, programs, right? You can do Myers-Briggs, you can do all different kinds. But I'm just going to introduce you to one version. Just one version is one version that I've seen work time and time again. It's simple to understand, something that you can pick up relatively quickly in a conversation, right? And it can have quite a bit of impact on you interviewing and finding select partners in the future that can help complement you. All right. So it's communication styles. We have four communication styles. We talk about the analytic, the driver, the amiable, and the expressive. All right, so those names by themselves don't really tell you a whole lot, but let's talk about them in more details. So the analytical person, right, they are slower at understanding things. They think thoroughly through it. They understand that there is going to be a trade or an offset, right? So they're trying to think through all the potential risk, and they're not one to make quick decisions, but they make thorough decisions that take a lot of people and situations into account, right? Then we've got the driver. Now, the driver is a high performer. They like to get things done. They're impatient by trait, right? They drive good results, right? A lot of business owners are going to be drivers, right? They get things done, right? And then you've got your amiable. Amiable, they like to make people feel good, right? They like partnerships and friendships. They will have long conversations with you. It's important to them that you feel respected, valued, supported, right? They're not necessarily going to be your fantastic analytical people. They have a hard time making decisions, right? Because they take other people's opinions into consideration and they don't want to hurt anybody. All right, I know, right? And then we've got our expressives. A lot of business owners are expressive, and it's not bad, it's great, right? You can always tell where they are. They're very passionate about things. They understand what they want to accomplish. They can excite and motivate people, right? That's your expressives. All right, so you can be multiple levels, right? You could be maybe a driver and an expressive, right? Or maybe you're a little bit of an expressive and animal, or like right in the middle. What we all do in life, based on the relationships that we're in, is we flex. That's the term that we use for we could be a driver, but when we know that we have to be more analytical, we could slow ourselves down, learn a whole new level of communication, right? And flex and be more of the analytical, or understand our limitations as a driver and try to be more expressive and communicate better, right? Understand the world that we live in is one where we flex our muscles and we get stronger by being able to understand the different communication styles and meet those different people, different styles where they are. Right? That's the beauty of it. So here you go. Here's a little picture where it breaks down what each of these four groups kind of takes on as a mantra, these different personalities. You're analytical. They say, let me think how it could work, right? They are efficient, focused, goal-oriented, realistic, dependable, determined. They're not very good at being critical. They are not, they can be indecisive, old-fashioned, hard to please, moralistic, and unemotional, right? Whereas your driver, like, let's get this done, right? Let's take the action on. They can be candid, strong-willed, independent, right? Decisive, practical, efficient, determined. But they can also come off as being harsh, controlling, short-sighted, abrasive, pushy, and power-seeking. I know, all the good stuff, there's always the equal bad stuff, right? Okay, so you're amicable, right? They're people focused. They want to discuss with their team. Again, they're tied to that team. They don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. They are loyal, supportive, respectful, dependable, agreeable, and they have perspective. But they're comforting. They need a lot of comforting. They can be needy. They could be unsure, right? They're dependent on getting feedback, right? They can't make those decisions themselves. They need others. It can be awkward, and they can easily be manipulated. Sounds terrible, right? Expressive. All right, so here are my ideas about this. They want to focus on ideas, right? They have to communicate. They're ambitious, enthusiastic, visionary, fun-loving, friendly, influential, right? But they can also be seen as being overbearing, unrealistic, egotistical, um, undisciplined, manipulative, and hasty. So for every good thing, there's a bad thing, right? But remember, these are general traits. You might find yourself in the middle, and that's fine. You can certainly be in the middle. But what's important about this picture is to show that although there are the good sides, they can be these other side effects that play into conversations and communication that could be unintentional. And you have to be alert to this and understand that you might be dealing with an amicable individual, right? Who really has a hard time making decisions. And you might be a driver on the other end of the spectrum. And that amicable could be very difficult for you to deal with, right? You come off being a certain way. You have to figure out how you kind of change or alter your communication in order for you to be more impactful in that type of communication. Okay, a relationship. All right, so here we go. So I want you to think along these lines of being able to ask and tell, and whether or not there's certain power factors here at play. Focus on the facts as an analytical. They act when there's a clear payoff. They're careful not to commit too quickly, right? Whereas the driver focuses on results, takes charge, makes quick decisions, likes challenges. Think about each of these four boxes and what you need for your team. You'll identify yourself. You've written down your list of the type of characteristics or personalities that you've enjoyed working with. And as you're thinking about the different communication levels that we talked about, strategic, operational, tactical, you need to identify the personality types that are best going to work within those communication structures. Now, this is a lot, right? This is a lot. But what I'm really driving to is that you have a lot to commit in your business. Understanding you and understanding how you're going to achieve those goals within the business and how you're going to communicate and work together makes a huge difference. And what I've seen from a lot of business owners, new and old, is they don't put as much thought into communication and understanding how different areas of the business either suffer or improve because of communication. And it all starts there. Like it's all about that same factor, being able to accomplish the goals and work together. All right, so now that we've kind of introduced those personality types, I want you to really understand what description fits you, right? What personality type do you need to cover the communication focuses in your business, right? That's where we find others that we enjoy working with, right? Their personality traits, and we hire or complement our existing team members, including ourselves. Now, if all of that is really interesting and you want more, right, there is a book out there. It's called People Styles at Work. It goes into much more detail on being able to learn how to flex, understanding yourself, understanding different positions or roles, and the type of different personality traits that make for a good strategic fit. Right? You wouldn't want to put an amicable person in the middle of a sales role, right? Maybe a driver would be better for that. That other person, they're not going to feel comfortable stepping on people's toes and being aggressive, right? They're not that nature. That's just an example of how you can use these personality types in order to hire from and to find the right team. Now, when we talk about finding the right team, the next conversation I hope you enjoy is talking about branding. All right. So you're like, Rebecca, you go from communication to branding. I promise you, it's all connected. It's all connected here. All right. Branding and culture are a big part of what makes a business strong, not just today, not just tomorrow, but continuously strong. So let's talk about branding basics. I want you to think about the different branches of the military. All right, think about the different branches. Can you describe what sets each branch apart? Pretty obvious, right? Can you give a basic understanding for the tradition and the values of those branches? We all can say yes, yes, it's pretty obvious to the outsider or insider how they're different, right? Do members of the different branches look alike and act alike? For a large part, we could probably say, yeah, there's a certain cut, right? It's a different being a Marine than it is being an Army, right? There's a difference between Air Force and Marine. There's differences, right? So with that, I'm going to welcome you to branding. All right, because the military is fantastic with branding. They get their image out there, right? They understand what they're looking for, the type of individuals, the type of community that they're trying to build around their organization, right? So businesses that are successful attract their target market, right? That's what branding's about. It's about understanding what makes you successful, right? And attracting those same individuals. They're clear in their expectations, they're focused, right? They understand the personality traits and the skills that make for a good employee, right? Or I guess you would say user buyer if we're in the business world. They set and enforce a shared set of values and beliefs that keep those teams connected. Now, if we were to look outside the military and look in a business, right, we would see that if a business was able to hire, attract, and maintain individuals with shared values and belief systems, they would have a well-run, well-oiled machine, right? They most likely would be very connected in sync, and the communication would be smooth around all parties, right? Business outsiders see this consistency and they understand the value, the respect, and they identify with the brand, right? Thinking about the military again, switching to that example, if we were at, I don't know, any event and we had a group of Marines, right, it would be easy to identify that. We could all respect where they're coming from, right? We would identify with their brand. It would be easy to see. We want to do the same thing within our business, all right? So what brand does your business have? I want you to think about that. And if you don't have a business just yet, you're in contemplation of that business. What brand do you want your business to have, right? What does that look like? What kind of culture, environment, what kind of belief systems do you want them to have, right? If you came to work every day, what type of people do you want to work with, right? Interesting conversation. All right, so how you define and cultivate that brand for your company is really important. I want you to answer that question. So how do you define and cultivate it? Right? And when we say cultivate, that creates an environment that helps keep those individuals included and feel well-rounded. Example, let's move to something that's not military, but still very relevant on the service side, right? And that might be firemen, right? They have a different type of community and culture, one of service and value and giving back, right? And so we might be able to look in and say, that's their brand, that's their culture, where they find those individuals that are selfless and want to give back and want to contribute. All right. So now we're kind of seeing branding, hopefully in a slightly different way, and understanding how the military has made a huge example of that, but been very successful in identifying that and attracting the right people. All right, so this is where we talk about culture. Now, culture, right, for all that it is deep and wide. And I'm going to give it a very superficial pass here, so I apologize. But let's talk about culture, which is defined by Wikipedia as being the umbrella term which encompasses the social behavior and norms found in human societies, as well as the knowledge, beliefs, arts, laws, customs, capabilities, and habits of individuals within a group. All right, so we create cultures in our business. Now, if you say, Rebecca, I have a business and I definitely don't have a culture, right? I will push you and say, yes, you do have a culture. Everyone has a culture, but it would be a culture by default. All right, because if you're not driving the culture in your business, guaranteed there's a culture and you're just not aware of it. And culture by default can be a very scary thing, all right? It can lead to workers being lazy, right? Just not necessarily holding on to certain values, scapegoating. It Cultures by default can be a very bad thing. So you have to be able to help define what you want to see, make sure that you're hiring to it, you're bringing people in with those same set of shared beliefs and values, and you're feeding that culture, right? So maybe you have a culture of education, of being your best self, right? Of physical health and well-being. Then you would want to drive that culture by offering opportunities and giving, support and feedback and sharing those values and talking about and opening that, right? So strong businesses understand the power of their culture, right, of what they're building, and they use that to make a cohesive organization. Every aspect of the business flows through the company culture, and that can't be more true. Think about Chick-fil-A, right? Great business example, right? We can all think about an experience with Chick-fil-A if you've ever been, and they have a culture of service, right? So if you go in, they say, my pleasure, right? Can I have a drink? My pleasure, right? It's a culture of service, and it all flows through the personal beliefs of the organization and how they train and indoctrinate their employees. And that, my friend, is what you're going to be thinking about in your business. As a strong leader, you need to understand the culture. You need to make sure that you find people that are good cultural fits for your company and that you're communicating through that culture, because everything flows through the culture, and you're achieving your mission. So my question to you is, what is your company culture? What are you being intentional on building and fostering that culture, right? That is a tough question, and I would love to see you write about it and really think through that. All right, moving on. I like this. This is cute, right? Connecting the knowledge. They're all connected. Right? And in reality, we're all connected. We are all connected. And we connect this knowledge and this shared value. And we have common themes from military branches to business, right? Communication. Communication is so important that I put it in capital letters, all caps here. There's different levels of communication, right? You want to be strong in communication, make sure you're thorough and detailed. You hopefully have strong leaders that communicate those values, that communicate in the different roles that are critical for your organization to function, right? And veteran business owners understand communication, branding, and culture probably better than civilians. You've lived it, you've seen the benefits. There might have been some not so great benefits, right? There might be some bad sides of it, but at the same time, you understand it in a very tangible way, right? So I want you to take time and try to think about the right leadership and framework for your business. What's working? What do you think could be done better? Right? Thinking about the different levels of communication. How are you getting the message out? How are you living, serving, and breathing that mission and value? And remember, identify the critical roles and find the right personalities to effectively manage the business and to achieve those mission and vision. Wow, we have like flown through our time together, right? So let's move on to the summary. All right. Regardless, I feel like there's this language of business. So whether you're military or civilian, there's a language of business and we all speak it. We've spoken it since we were able to spend $1, right? I want you to bridge terminology and experience between the military career to the business world. It's very applicable, right? Um, the experience is relative, it's powerful. Understanding the leadership in those 3 different focused areas of the business and how that applies to what you're trying to accomplish, right, can be very, very powerful. Just remember that leadership component and the different levels of the organization that need to support that type of communication. All right, bridging communication, focusing on the tools that you're utilizing in the business to accomplish that goal, to go from strategic to operational to tactical, right? And then back up. So you got to bridge the communication and what tools and how are you fostering that growth. Think through the hiring and the onboarding. You know, that's a big part of it too, making sure you have the right talent and skill set. Really creating the culture around that talent and skill set, right? Fostering it and growing it. And then, of course, keeping your message for your business strong with that branding and culture focus. All right, so that's the language of business. It all connects, right? And I'm going to just kind of connect that to the business world in your SBDC because business planning and pitches, right? That is something we know in the civilian world, right? It is a term that helps us basically put together the strategic, operational, and tactical goals. That is your business plan. That is how it all comes together. That is how investors, lenders, um, anybody that's looking to support you, right? That business plan tells us what you're trying to accomplish, how you're going to accomplish it, right? And it communicates those messages to us. Your business pitch, right? That is communicating your mission and vision, what you're trying to accomplish, and how we can support you to accomplish it, right? So I like to say, do your pitch practice. It's almost like singing, right? Pitch practice. Pitch often, get feedback, right? And improve. You want to clearly communicate your offering to other businesses, employees. You might have several different pitches depending on the audience that you're seeking. But just clarify communication to all parties, internal and external, right? Internal meaning your team members, external meaning investors, outside individuals, maybe even vendors, clients, and then update that pitch and communicate it often. And I really say that because we're in a time of uncertainty, right? Time where things are changing. And so you always want to be able to perfect the pitch based on today's environment, today's conditions. And that way you will always be evolving and be really giving your best foot forward. I like this because I think it's a lot of fun. It's so true. Communication is the real work of leadership, right? Nothing that gets lost on veterans. They understand leadership. They understand communication is necessary. But really, that's the whole essence of the talk today. Business is the same, right? Business is all about communicating and making things happen. And with that, right, with that focus on leadership, I'm going to go ahead and take us into questions and answers. So this, I would love to hear your feedback. I really want to hear insight, what worked for you, questions, and think of this as more of an opportunity to, expand and explore together.
Well, a couple of things that I got from that. As I told you earlier, I'm an amiable expressive, which now I understand why it's hard for me to make a decision because as an expressive, I'm manipulative, but as an amiable, I'm easily manipulated. So I'm no wonder I can't make a decision. Um, and another way that I've heard the strategic, operational, tactical put is like vision, process, execution.
I like that.
And it's all the same. It's probably just called something different depending on the speaker and the audience. I do like the strategic, operational, and tactical better. It just seems clearly defined to me.
That's good.
So, and do you think that businesses need a combination of all of those communication styles to
Agreed.
be successful?
Agreed. I think so. That is my personal take on it. And, being in business as well as working with different businesses constantly is that they really are different functions, right? Once you get outside of being a solopreneur, one person, when you start hiring people, right, you start creating the need for different levels of communication. And when you get multiple employees that you are managing tasks in order, you start getting to a situation where you really need the full three levels. Now,
Mhm.
maybe you cover for a smaller business two of the levels, right? And then you need help with the tactical side, for example. That might be true, but really all three levels exist in every business. It's just whether or not you can manage all three. Very few of us have the skill sets to manage all three levels of communication ourselves once a business starts to really grow. And identifying who are the key players in that communication for each level, and then their personalities or skill sets, like where are they most effective, right? Then we start to really understand, do we have all communication covered in a well-rounded way where we're having the right people with the right personality traits that complement each other, working together for the common good, right? Then we've got a complete picture of the communication, how we're working together, the inner dialogue, and then whether or not we're communicating the full message of the business appropriately to the outside.
Mhm. Well said. Well said. Um, Talking about culture, um, do you think that culture is fosters a behavior in employees? Like if the expectations are not clearly defined, then somebody is, as you said, there's going to be a culture no matter what. So the expectations are not clearly defined, that culture is going to create itself.
Right.
And so when you try to correct a problem, like Brett, you can't make it to work by 8 o'clock. You're not even here by 9 o'clock. Well, Paula, you don't get here till 9:30 or 10.
There you go.
So
Culture by
how do you
default.
know? No? And so the leadership actually has to clearly define those expectations and then perpetuate it. They've got to be the example of it.
Correct. And so, as a business owner, our goal is to hopefully create a business that can run without us, right? That is a
Hmm.
fantastic goal. Well, you can't let a business run by itself and not have a culture that allows for that to happen. You've got to
Uh-huh.
put the culture, everything flows through the culture. So, if I had a business culture of accountability where people showed up, right? It was very well known what their goals were, what their job was, because I communicated efficiently, right?
Hmm.
Then if I had to leave and go on vacation, right? Then I can do that because the culture supports that. Now, if I had a culture by default where everybody relied on me, right? Then
Right.
I can't leave, right? The culture I've created is one of dependency and one that, does not operate on their own. That is a culture by default that has been unintentionally developed. And so when you can think through these different personality traits, what you have, what works well with you, right? Making sure that you've got the well-rounded communication. Then
Hmm.
you're putting the culture in that supports that, right? You're finding the right people that have that same type of mission and value. Then you don't have to be on the phone with them every time they pick up a client call. You don't have to be in the car with them when they go and do a delivery, right? You
Hmm.
know what the outcome's going to be because you have chosen and selected and hired and you have found that. Now, the best that we have seen in recent years for defining a company culture was Zappos, right? So I know they've been in the news when Tony Hesh passed away, but we can clearly look at what he accomplished in his time and his focus on creating a winning culture, a company culture. They even had a business that went around and helped smaller businesses understand their company culture and then hire and filter everything through that, right?
Hmm.
That whole story came out of the fact that Tony had a business prior. He hired people that were qualified to run that business, right? Had great resumes, but they didn't define the culture, didn't hire to a specific type of trait. And he said the
Hmm.
culture was horrible, right? He ultimately just got out of the business, sold it because he couldn't correct it, right? When you create a company culture by default and you don't have any control over it anymore, it's really hard to get control. So much easier to do that early on in the conversation as you're defining and understanding communication styles.
It really is much easier to hit that up front, if you cannot exist in this culture that uh, if you can't meet these expectations and exist in this culture I'm establishing, then you're not in the right place.
Correct.
Because at some point it's like, well, when you try to fix it, when you try to correct it, it's like, well, what's changed? My behavior's been fine up until now. You've never said anything to me before. What's changed? Why is it different? And so you start to get that push and pull on that. Okay, I shall.
You know, I didn't realize that the culture was 9:30 to 10 start time. So clearly I was just out of the loop on that
Yeah, Roger, you didn't know?
one.
You didn't know? Lori beats us here every morning, so we know. We know what the expectation is. Um, Lori's response was, wait, what? Um, oh, and she's happy that she can take trips too. Let's see. Brett is saying feedback is extremely important, but should you take feedback from any particular source more than others, like a suggestion box in the lunchroom versus a team leader or department head or even clients?
Yeah, good question. I think every piece of feedback is important, right? But you do have to weigh it, right? So I say that and say, what if it's an employee situation and there's a fight between them, right?
Mhm.
That feedback may not be as valuable as getting feedback from the customer or client. So
Mhm.
there's definitely a priority. my suggestion would be taking feedback from all parties, right? You see that in the HR world, which I'm not an expert, but in the HR world, they talk about getting 360 reviews, being able to get a review from all around, and if they do that consistently within the organization, creating a culture of feedback, right? Then you have a better way of identifying and trying to manage those certain type of character traits or that culture that's being created. So feedback in all aspects is important. I'm not saying one is over the other, although do understand, what is coming out of it, be intelligent on that front, and then just constantly, communicating and improving that communication.
You mentioned earlier, before we actually started recording, talking about the person you consulted with to create this presentation and what he would have liked to know before he left the military and went into business for himself. What does he think about all of these, everything that you've created here?
Yeah, so in his feedback, very generous sharing with me. He basically said that all of this is very understood. Like he is really knowledgeable about it. He sees it in existence. He understands it. When coming into the civilian world, they just call it different things, right? The terminology, but the leadership focus has always been there. The military is very strong with the leadership, but converting the dialogue, the language into the civilian, business plan, right? Pitches, converting that language was something that he really needed help with because the rest of it he understood. He could execute on understanding the language and what was being asked of him when he was going and growing that business. That was something that was more of a soft skill that he really wanted to see made available to other veteran business owners. So he's doing good. He's been doing pitch sessions one after another. It's always good to see when they, break out there, start going into the civilian world and making a difference and an impact.
Yes, the military does wonders. It really does. It fosters the teamwork, where some people may enter the military thinking it's all about me, and they come back and say, no, it's my team. It's all of us. So I'm very appreciative of that. So Brett said something about feedback with a vetting filter. Are you talking about the two employees clashing?
Yeah, everything that she said, basically, I was trying to sum it up, if I understood it right. Basically, yes, take feedback from everywhere, but vet it a little bit and to prioritize what you really lean on harder than one thing versus the other. And yeah, those were great examples. Thank you for that.
As opposed to, you only supply Cheetos in the snack machine, why not flaming Cheetos? So thank you for your input, but no. Okay. Are there any other questions? Any other comments? Rebecca, as always, this has been marvelous.
Thank you. I hope it finds value. If there's any, updates or insight, I'd love to hear that so that we can incorporate it for the next time the presentation is delivered. And I just want to thank everybody for coming out and listening, and happy Veterans Day.
Happy Veterans Day. And I just want to mention that the participants on today's webinar will receive a survey, and we'd appreciate it if you would complete that survey, give us an idea of what topics you would like to see and how we can improve our program. We have upcoming webinars. Oh, well, thankfully, we have Rebecca coming back on Monday. Financial negotiations workshop for business owners. Then Lorna Kibbe is ending her series on delivering your presentation, how to perform like a pro. We've got Eric Spellman coming back. He's always fun. Driving business with email marketing. And then Ashley Cook to round out the month of November. Ashley Cook will be here to talk about writing eye-catching product descriptions. You can visit our website at sbdc.nctc.edu, and there you can register for any of these webinars or any of the upcoming webinars. We're always adding to, so stay engaged up with that. You can get our contact information. You can schedule an appointment with an advisor. We have all sorts of resources out there for small business owners. One of our newest ones is called Size Up, where you can actually access information specific to your industry and your location. You can get demographics, you can get competitors in your area for your business. It's a very powerful tool. And we couldn't do any of this without our great funding partners, the people that actually make all of this possible. The Small Business Administration, the state of Texas, North Texas SBDC Regional Office in Dallas, and North Central Texas College. And I want to thank you all for joining us today on this Veterans Day. And we look forward to seeing you on Monday when we welcome Rebecca back. Thank you all, and we're going to end this webinar at this time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.